Gardens and their contents are the inspiration for a good deal of artwork. We'll have more on that, and our Northland experts with the answers to keep your gardens looking their best. Straight ahead on Great Gardening.
We're like producing a serious amount of food.
We hope to be able to provide food for the community.
I love sharing the garden with others.
You can do a lot of fun things with broccoli.
All of our students here are involved in gardening.
It has a sign on the door that says my happy place, and it really is.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Pamela Fish, coming to you from our homes during the COVID pandemic with horticulturist and educator Bob Olin and garden professional Deb Burns-Erickson. We hope everyone is safe and well and enjoying time outside and in the garden. Bob, are we seeing spring plants and flowers come in a little slower this year? I have had a couple questions about things leafing out slow or not budding as soon as people are used to.
Well, I think we may have started out that way, but we've had this surge of warmer temperatures and things are catching up very rapidly. So I think we're just about on schedule right now.
Okay. And Deb, what are you seeing and hearing from gardeners out there? I know you've been busy with it all.
Yeah, and it's true about things leafing out late, and a lot, again, of the damage to the crowns of perennials, a lot of perennial sales, and edibles. Oh my goodness. People can't get enough of edibles this spring.
Yeah, isn't that true? I keep hearing that, that there are record sales of edibles around here and everybody's very interested in planting their own food.
Yeah,
right, and trying to get your hands on them now.
It's very true. It's a trend we've seen for a while, but I think people had the time and there's an awareness of some of the health benefits. And then we had some nice weather here in May. So that all contributes, I'm sure.
Indeed. Okay, well, we do have some photos that came from Sue Cruz, who's enjoying the spring blooms of her North Shore garden. You can see grape hyacinth there. She has both white and pink bleeding heart and those yellow daffodils, of course. And Bob, I know you said you snapped some pictures for us as well. Tell us what you have.
Well, in terms of signs of the season, I noticed that all the apples are breaking bud, and we've got some wild strawberries that are taking off. And one of our always perennial favorites is the marsh marigold, or people will call the cowslip. They're all just breaking loose right now. So it's a very exciting time. Asparagus is out of the ground. Rhubarb looks great. And I think things are happening very quickly. Day to day, I think you just want to watch and appreciate as the landscape changes. It changes daily, which is kind of fun.
Absolutely. We've been getting questions too via email at ask@wdse.org. Thanks for those questions and keep them coming in. We have one more show yet this spring where we're looking for questions. And we're going to start with one of the questions that came with a picture of this flower that Susie and Dick have coming up in an old flower bed the last few years. They're in Fayal Township. This yellow bloom comes out about mid-May generally. You guys have any idea what it is?
You know, that one's pretty unusual. I don't know. We get these volunteers. It's got strap leaves, but I'm not sure what that is. Do you have any ideas, Deb?
I was stumped by that one too, and I'm like, unless a squirrel brought in somebody's bulb that they had planted somewhere else, or or a volunteer from something, but it looks like an older variety that just is thriving in the location. I'm not sure what it is though.
They might want to propagate it. It looks like a good one.
Right. Enjoy it. It is a lovely flower. And so many flowers and botanicals inspire works of art. Well, at a garden along Lake Superior's South Shore, an area artist has created her own and displayed for others artwork inspired by gardens.
Well, my name is Patra Holter, and we are in Washburn, Wisconsin, and welcome to my garden. This is the shade garden up here. It is a white pine, very old white pine. But this is why there's a shade garden. This was just empty land, except there was a little bit of this creeping pine, and now look where it is. It's all over the place. So that's created a nice ground cover. The other ground cover that I really like, and it's very good under pines and in the shade, is called sweet woodruff. Cream-belled geranium, which spreads all over the place. That is a globe thistle, and I like it because it doesn't spread, but there'll be nice big purple bulbs, globes pretty soon. I've lived here about maybe 10, 15 years altogether, and I've been a gardener about that time, a serious gardener about that time. Did the Master Gardeners program. I belong to the Chequamegon Ashland Bayfield Master Gardeners group. Last year we put on a Master Gardeners art show because a lot of gardeners are artists or they view their gardens as art, and as I do. When you're gardening, and even people who don't view themselves as artists, you're concerned about the textures and the colors and the forms and what goes behind what and what'll show up and what won't. Now, my favorite thing in this garden, though, is this plant right here. And this is called Jeffersonia. They almost look like butterflies. And so I really like that. It's beginning to go by a little bit, but there it is. Well, they seem to like the shade. They do very well in that. My soil here is just so-so because it's very acetic. And that is one thing where in my artwork I have done a whole, I got into ferns and did a whole series of ferns. I always plant a garden of cosmos, but even that is really slow in coming. I have a path running through the center of every level so that you can walk in here and garden. This was a narrow path here, and it was just sinking right into the ravine. Yeah, it was getting downright dangerous to garden the bottom part. They built the stairs, and as you can see, these are the paths that just go through, and you can walk right through there and garden. I love it here. I love my garden. I do. And it's fun to garden in this garden because it's interesting, you know, and these paths make it easy to walk through and do what you need to do. Okay, this is my culinary garden, and they're all container gardens. The first is nasturtium, and I always grow nasturtium because I like it in salads. I like the flowers, and the leaves taste peppery. And I always put flowers in with the herbs because it just looks nice. The view is fabulous. In the wintertime, it's fabulous. In the summertime, there's an awful lot of growth. It's just a great spot in town. I was very lucky to have found this.
We want to thank Patra for that lovely tour on the South Shore.
You know, isn't it fun? But even amateurs that don't have a lot of artistic ability can use some of these basic ideas of form and texture and color and succession planning. And it just adds another dimension to your perennial and annual flower gardens.
Right. And she obviously had help there with some landscaping, but turned out very nice. She's enjoying it so much, and we're glad. All right, let's get to some questions, you guys. Our first one comes from a gardener who has about a half a dozen different types of winter squash in her Arrowhead Community Garden plot. This is from Carrie. She says, is it better to start seeds in peat pots or seed them directly in the garden? They're 80 to 90 days maturity, and she says, I know they don't like being transplanted, but of course the growing season is pretty short.
Lots of good points there. 80 to 90 days, I think, is fine. It's when you get up to 110, 120 that we really run out of season. So she's going to be okay. She has lots of options. She could start in peat pots, but you typically set them back with a little transplant shock. I would not just set the peat pot in the ground. I would slit it and then not break apart the roots. They're not like a tomato. They're very sensitive to any kind of root disturbance. This late in the season, warm soils, warm temperatures, she can just direct seed and she'll probably have about the same good results that way.
And there are a lot of different types of winter squash that people have success with in gardens in the Northland.
Oh, there are so many of them. I've got about 25 different varieties. They're fascinating, from the heirlooms to the new hybrids, and there seem to be new material every year. They're ornamental and also they're edible. So that's a really nice combination coming in the fall, and we've had warm falls. So again, I wouldn't worry about length of maturity for most of these, but try to stay under 100 days if you can with some of these.
Okay, great. Deb, Lynn, and I don't know where she's writing from, but she says, my garden's being overtaken with lily of the valley, and how can I get rid of that? I love that lily of the valley, but boy, it's tough.
It is tough. And I mean, right, she could try digging it up, but it's going to run. And then it's probably going to be one of Bob's treatments, for the fall, where you're going to want to cover and, try to do the best you can all summer and then get rid of it, just really hit it in the fall and do the best you can. But yeah, some people have the perfect conditions for lily of the valley to thrive.
I've had them move into my blueberry planting. So what I'm going to try is, as you suggest, Deb, I'm going to mow it down and let it re-sprout, and then it'll be vulnerable in the fall if you want to dig or other things. So if you can get it so it doesn't have those good energy reserves coming into the winter months, we're going to give that a try.
All right. Bob, we have Jean, who's going to let the vegetable garden go dormant for the first time in 33 years. It's a 20 by 30 bed. She's looking for a cover crop to plant to rejuvenate the soil, hoping for something that won't attract rabbit and deer.
Kind of chuckling, just about everything attracts deer for sure, I would say. One of my favorites is an annual rye, or what we call a winter rye, which you can seed in, and you can seed it in the fall if you like, and then till it all down. Either that, or she can certainly go with some of the perennials. It depends on how long she plans on leaving it dormant. But cover crops are great ideas. I think some of the perennials, some of the clovers and so forth can be just fine, but they are perennials, so you have to be aware of that. Where the rye is a winter rye, you can come in as long as it doesn't set seed. You get it tilled in the spring. That's really a nice option for a lot of people.
Great, good suggestion, and hopefully Jean will be able to get back to gardening after a year off. Deb, Norma in Rice Lake is having trouble with the Annabelle hydrangea. It's breaking at the lowest area at ground level. The branches are all along the branches there. It does have leaf buds.
And I'm going to guess it's more, damage from being girdled, and that's what's causing it to break. It should come from the rootstock because Annabelle's very hardy. And again, it's probably stored energy in the buds that's making the buds break. But I believe if she cleans it up, and if it's just snapping, then and I'm going to guess if she looks down there, there's going to be girdling at the base and lots of it. So, it's going to be hard, but she's going to want to clean up that girdle damage, because again, the plant would flush a lot better if she did that, and then it would come more from the roots.
Mary wants to know, what is the best mulching material to use for newly planted apple trees?
Ooh, that's a good question. Mulches on the soil surface, of course, you don't want them to break down, so I think wood chips are going to be just fine. She wants to take all the grass out from the stem out beyond the drip line of the tree, because that's where the new growth is going to be. And she just wants to be very careful not to have any wood mulch up against the bark of the tree, because that can, in fact, cause some damage. But wood chips, pine needles, they're all going to work great. You can come over the top with fertility. The rain will seep through that. So any one of those materials are going to be fine.
Good. And hopefully some delicious apples in the fall. Okay, thanks, guys. We're going to have more questions coming up. But in this week's Grow and Show, a bunch of new spring blooms. These hellebores from Robin Trinko Russell have made their appearance this spring, blooming in her gardens on Madeline Island. Mary Augustyn of Beauvais is awash in the scent of these white lilacs, which are also attracting attention from the monarch butterflies. And the first big bursts of color have come to the Hermantown yard of Juliana Grell, where the rhododendrons are out near a new potted dahlia and strawberry plant. The primrose has come back strong and is safely nestled near some stationary chickens. To share your own garden blooms, send photos to greatgardening@wdse.org and let us show what you grow. All right, we do have more questions that were emailed in, and another one that comes with pictures so you can see what's happening, to a favorite tree of Tony's. Now, Tony has a sugar maple, doesn't look great. What are you guys thinking? He says it's half dead. Pictures show bark peeled off, but part of the tree is about to bud.
Well, obviously there's quite a bit of damage at the stem there now. That could be, certainly could be buck rubbing. It could be sun scald from winter damage when it was younger, but oftentimes we see that bark shedding like that when the tree's under stress anyway. So it could well be that it's a site that's wrong for that particular tree. They like good drainage, but relatively good fertility. They don't like to stand alone sometimes. Sometimes the southern exposures can be hard on maple. So I would rather suspect that it's a tree under stress. It'll probably continue to grow, but sometimes you have to cut your losses and just start again. He will want to do this. He'll trim up all that bark, make sure it doesn't collect any moisture. You can use a box cutter or something like that to clean it up. It will heal to some extent, but not completely. You get a little bit of regrowth from the margins. He can try that if he likes, but I'm concerned that that tree is under quite a bit of stress, and that's what's causing the bark to shed like that. Any thoughts, Deb?
Yeah, I just thought it looked like sun scald, like older damage that had been there. Again, if it's the exposure and a bad location, then that's going to affect it both with the sun scald and the tree, being under stress from it. So that was my only thought. Same as yours, Bob.
Okay. Deb, also, we heard from, I don't know who, they said they have girdled Crimson King, completely girdled, any chance for life.
Again, it's going to be cut your losses. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best is today. So if you can get a tree, I'd get it. I think if it does survive in the slightest, it's going to be so disease ridden and it's going to die eventually. So I would have to remove it and start again.
Bob, I think people too are they see leaves sprouting on some of these, and it gives them hope.
Well, hope springs eternal. The problem with a girdled tree like that is that the animal that did it, and could have been voles, we saw so much of that damage this year, but they take that first inner layer of bark, and that's actually the layer of vascular tissue that carries sugars down into the roots. There's another layer that brings moisture up. So that wasn't damaged. So the moisture is coming up right now. It's popping the buds, but there's no way for the sugars to go down and replenish the roots. So eventually the tree dies a little bit. So if you're feeling good about it, you can let those leaves pop, but don't be too disappointed if the tree doesn't survive anyway. So pruning at ground level, cutting your losses, starting over right now in the spring is probably going to be the best idea.
Okay. All right. Deb, Julie in Duluth is wondering why the lilacs are having trouble leafing out this year.
They are slow this year, extremely slow this year. And again, with the girdling, there's a lot of loss. Again, checking the bottom, see what kind of loss there is. But it has been very slow, depending on when she sent her question in. Because, again, things are popping now quickly, but they hadn't been up until this point. And they were taking their time. And there's been so dry and so much wind, then they're not going to have a lot of energy to open up. So hopefully we get this rain and then the warm temperatures, then things will really open up.
And you know what, Deb, we had talked earlier about how many questions you're getting from people about watering, and it has been dry, and are people watering enough?
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of funny to me, but I get this question all the time. Like, we have hanging baskets. Everyone wants a giant hanging basket right away for Mother's Day. And so they bring home these mammoth things. Well, the bigger the basket and the more foliar weight, the more it needs water. So it's going to need it daily, especially without any rain and with these dry winds. So most plants, the bigger they are, the more they need. You can check them, put your finger in them, check their weight, but generally bigger means a bigger drink. So people need to be mindful of that with the weather that we've had too.
You know, Deb, don't you think baskets are so much different than something in the ground, because a plant that's in the ground can put roots down to a moisture supply, where these really are dependent upon a very light media, standing up in the wind, exposed to the sun. So you're right, daily watering in many cases, right?
Absolutely. Watering, and then adding a little bit of fertility, a little bit of time-released fertilizer helps too, to make them look their best.
Well, Sharon from Two Harbors has woolly aphids. Last year, they infected a large maple. It was a mess all summer. Do you think they'll be back for a second year, Bob?
Well, typically what happens is insect populations, when they get so annoying, are so large that there's a sudden drop and a decline. So just when they're annoying you to the point where you want to even cut the tree down, oftentimes the next year it isn't near as bad because you see this sharp decline. Well, the aphids, get at them early, a stream of water, knock them off the leaves as soon as you can. And oftentimes they're not much of a problem. And they're not going to crawl back up on the tree once you wash them off.
All right. Here's one from Mary in Bovee, who says, is ammonium sulfate good for raspberries, or should I fertilize with something else? And I know we've talked about ammonium sulfate, but not necessarily in terms of using it on raspberries.
It's kind of interesting, but ammonium sulfate, we're getting the ammonia, which is a form of nitrogen. We're getting the sulfur. We are beginning to see some sulfur deficiency. Normally, I want to say for raspberries, you really don't want to drop the pH, which the sulfur component does. But we've controlled actually a lot of the sulfur emissions in some of our coal-fired plants. Consequently, we are beginning to see some sulfur deficiencies. So maybe one application with ammonium sulfate, but raspberries just typically want a little bit of nitrogen, so you could use urea or other forms of nitrogen and not worry about the sulfur. My only concern is we drop the pH below where the raspberry is happy. So one application's fine, but not on a continual basis.
Shirley wants to know, she read that a strawberry patch could be mowed when the berries are done, effectively preventing unwanted runners. And supposedly the plants no longer need extra time to provide for next year's berries. Is this true, and is it advised?
Well, generally, we wouldn't advise that if the plants are still in their productive phase. So a good June-bearing raspberry in this area, or rather strawberry in this area, should give you good productivity for about 2 to 3 years. And then maybe when the fruit or productivity is declining, at that point you could renovate and let the plants regrow from the roots, but not as an annual practice.
All right. Deb, Mickey from Two Harbors says that, first of all, she says we're her favorite gardeners, so that's really nice to hear. Thank you, Mickey. She had a patch of milkweed that did well for 3 years, planted from seed. It's a no-show. Another no-show this year, a red echinacea and an Amsonia that both were beautiful last year. Do you hear from people a lot, Deb, who come in and say, geez, I've had this for a few years, it's looked great, and now it didn't come back?
We have perennials. We've sold so many perennials this spring just because of the dramatic loss that a lot of people are having. And we had it in our greenhouses over winter too, that the crowns were getting eaten out by either mice or even rabbits. All that snowfall again really was detrimental. I mean, it was great for the mice and voles and everything because they could get under and get those crowns eaten out. But I've never seen the amount of loss in established, doing really well in the prime of their life perennials that were taken out just by being eaten out. That would be my guess of what happened there.
You know, in addition to that, I would agree with that, but have experienced these extremely warm falls where the plants aren't having a chance to acclimate. We're going from very warm temperatures to colder temperatures instead of a gradual cool down. So when plants, perennials cool down gradually, they are able to put more of that energy down in the roots. So that could also be a contributing factor. And we again have predictions for another very warm fall. So we'll see how this all plays out.
Looks like that's all the time for questions this week. Please check our website for more great gardening information. You can also watch past episodes, and you can follow us on Instagram at Great Gardening WDSE. And we want to thank everybody who sent in questions. Next time we have our final show of the regular season, so get your questions to us via email at ask@wdse.org. Thanks again, you guys. We really appreciate it. And from all of us here at Great Gardening, stay well and enjoy the garden.
Funding for Great Gardening is brought to you by the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.